Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Tech Leaders Hub, a very special episode we've got for you today. My guest today is Ron Zionpour, R&D Group Lead at Monday.com. Ron, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty great, I think, Cuba. Having a great time here.
Great time already. Yeah, I mean, the chat before this was great, and I'm extremely excited to be running today's session on a topic that we've touched upon just a little bit on Tech Leaders Hub before, product management and a product management culture. But I'm so happy to be going deeper into this with you on this call, dear watchers and listeners. This is all about you. This is all for you. So thank you for spending your time with Tech Leaders Hub. Whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the recording, we appreciate you all the same. Just let us know if you are watching live that this is all working correctly. Let us know that you can hear us and let us know that you can see us. This is getting recorded if you want to refer to it later. But of course, if you want to ask Ron your questions, then you have to do that live. The recording doesn't work that way. Ron, meanwhile, while we wait for confirmation that everything is fine on the technical level, who do you hope is tuning in today? Given what we have to discuss, who do you think will benefit from this the most? In what kind of situation?
Yeah, I think we hope that will join the call is as people from the engineering leadership that lead any kind of engineering team that is touching any product in the world. So something that is making impact on users and stuff. Mainly B2C, I hope, but also B2B is relevant as well. So we will touch many aspects of leading an engineering team that is responsible for a product. I hope that people from that industry will be joining us.
Yeah, definitely. Seems like a group that's going to benefit a lot from what we have to discuss. Although, if I know anything about Tech Leaders Hub, and I do because I host it, a lot of our discussions can find a much broader application because the thoughts we are sharing here, they apply to engineering first and foremost, but personally, I've learned a lot just about life in general. Anyway, I've got some comments rolling in to save me from my banter here. Lionel is saying everything is fine. Miles is saying all working. Thank you so much for tuning into Tech Leaders Hub on LinkedIn. If we've got anybody from YouTube or Twitter who wants to say that it's working, then please do so. Meanwhile, I think it's about time. We're almost 3 minutes in to ask you, Ron. On Tech Leaders Hub, we try to provide value from the very start so that people can take away these actionable insights right from the first minutes. So before we get into your background, before we get into Monday.com and what Monday's role is in people's everyday lives, I wanted to ask you the traditional Tech Leaders Hub question. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Ron, what is your number one tip for tech leaders?
Yeah, I think my number one tip is to always be a leader rather than a manager. I think kind of a cliche, I believe, but I found it, on myself during the time that I was becoming a team lead. As a junior team lead, I always care about what people are actually think about myself, within the team. Junior team lead, how do I act in specific situation and such. And I always care about not being, too like being egoless actually. And from there, I put myself, thinking about how am I as a leader and not as a manager. And during time when you need to handle many situations, like becoming more of a manager of a big group and many people, you always think about how you kind of keep the same situation when you are actually a leader that people would like to follow you, rather than being a manager who actually tell people what to do. So my number one tip is obviously be yourself, always be egoless, and although you're leading people, managing people, treat them as you lead them, as you want them to be following you, and not as you are managing them, or lead by commands or stuff like that. So that's
All
my
right.
number one tip, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right, awesome. I love that one. If you don't mind, I would love to get a little bit deeper into this. So, Is there any particular behavior that you think separates somebody who's focusing on being a leader from somebody who's being a manager? Do they speak differently? Do they focus on different things? Could you give me a little bit more detail here?
Yeah, funny thing is that where we are coming from Israel, actually, people are going to the army here as part of the as we grow up, and
Ah,
classically there you see how people are actually managing or commanding others without being true leaders sometimes. But from our day to day, I think the main difference is that you listen to people, you get feedback from people, you allow people that actually just joined your team to give some feedback and share ideas about what they think that we should do or do not do. And from there, I think you can create discussions that allowing you to manage situation in a way that people are actually learn on the way why you want to do that and why you think it's important to do stuff. So that more on the practical side. But also when we decide to do stuff, I think I oversharing a lot of things that I have. I always consider myself oversharing. I think it's a good kind of a good feature that you may have in some situation, mainly in leading others. So that's the difference in my opinion.
yeah, I really resonate with what you said about oversharing. The phrase that I like to use the most in my meetings with my team is like cards on the table. Let's be honest with each other, and I think it's crucial to create that space for honesty and transparency. So I love what you said there, and I'm very glad to add this tip to our kind of library of number one tips for
Thanks.
tech leaders. All right, so
Thanks.
that's already a great start. Now, before we get into the meat of this, the kind of the main part of what we have to discuss here, product management, at Monday and in your experience and how to make sure you have a strong product management culture, I wanted to ask for a little bit about, of your, background, your story so far, so that the people on the call can know kind of where you're coming from in terms of your experience. But before that, I actually wanted to ask, let's get some more engagement from the comments. I would love to see a little bit more from you, all watching and listening. How many of you have heard of Monday.com? I imagine it's going to be most of you. If any of you hasn't, then I would love to see a comment, because I'm really wondering about the kind of distribution of people who are familiar with the brand and not familiar with the brand. I'll wait for those comments to come in. Do it now. Do it now. Meanwhile, Ron, what can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm basically studied software engineering, and I'm coming from the software engineering, learning a BSc like 12 years ago almost. And I started as a very junior software engineer in one of the largest corporates that we have here in Israel. Real quick, I found myself, loved more of the startup culture rather than big corporate, and I left there and joined Innovid. It was 9 years ago already. I spent there 8 years of several roles. I was becoming a junior team lead about 2 years after, starting with leading a DevOps team at first, which was a bit different for me, and then several other roles of leading an engineering team, and ended there as a group lead responsible to a specific domain there. And like 1 year ago, I left and joined Monday.com as an R&D Group Lead, kind of the same role as I held in Innovid. And right now I'm responsible for one of the latest products that we created at Monday.com and another domain, so we can discuss that maybe more specific later on.
Okay. Yeah, definitely we should get a little bit more into the specifics here. By the way, Adekoya is saying, nice to be here. It's nice to have you here, Adekoya, unless I'm, really mispronouncing your name here. But anyway, thanks for the comment. I saw with Innovid, I think you were VP engineering there for a time.
Yeah, so that was the official title. It's more of leading a group of several teams. That's the specific role.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing I wanted to ask, because your resume is very impressive. Was there anything in particular that you can point to that allowed you to progress so fast through the ranks and get to VP engineering and now get to Monday.com? Was there anything that from the perspective of the time that has passed, you can point to that actually helped you and could maybe help others along the way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I always push myself beyond everything that I did. Even when I was a student in the academy, and even after that, I always try to push for getting out of the comfort zone and all of that, and take upon myself stuff that I knew that it's really out of the comfort zone, but will progress me in the way that I want to see myself in few years. It took me a while, by the way, to become a team lead. It's like I was hanging there between doing a team lead, tech lead, and was always care about putting my hands on the keyboard for as long as I can. So I had some friction there at some point in time. But one thing that I think took me, that I understood about myself, that I think that pushed me forward, is that I think that I was really good with people. Talking with people, leading others. I think I'm very fine with talking to people, and able to understand them and share thoughts, and get the feelings from other people. And I found myself leading a team at some point because of that, I think.
Okay, interesting. And did you do anything specific to like get good at talking to people, or does it come naturally?
Maybe it's a bit of the, like, both of them. I think it's something that you had, it's something that you love to do. It's not a
Oh,
skill, but also something that you like to do, to talking to
yeah,
people. You need to love that. At the end of the day, if you're leading people, you need to talk with them, and a lot.
yeah,
But it's also something that I embraced, and understood that I need to do more than that, more of that than the hands-on that I was craving about for a while. So yeah, I think it's like also embracing that in a
right.
way.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what I'm getting from this is, well, focus on the soft skills, of course, but also kind of have the courage to let go of the keyboard, right? Let
Yeah,
go of the kind of technical and the coding
yeah,
part of it.
that's a great description of that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I love that. I really do. All right, so let's get to the present then. I think that a question on many people's minds might be, well, first of all, we should probably start by defining, Monday.com for people who might not be aware. And what does an R&D group lead do, and what do you work on specifically?
Yeah, so let's talk about Monday.com first. Monday.com is a platform that allow people to manage their work. We call it a work OS. It's a way to manage your tasks, and able to work with your team towards reaching goals that you have as a team together. So mainly like boards, and dashboards around it that you can build to manage all the tasks and everything. So that's like a pure definition of Monday.com.
Okay. Yeah, and now tell me about, your role there in the product, kind of within Monday that you're working on.
Yeah, so first of all, an R&D group lead. So at Monday, we're split into groups. A group is actually responsible for several domains, more than one domain. A domain is actually a team that is responsible for a specific land within the product itself. So it could be, for example, in one of the teams that I'm leading, which is a new product or a new feature within the Work OS that we created in the last year, is Monday workdocs. So it's a doc editor that you can do many things on it. The classic way to think about it is like Google Doc, but it's way different than that. And it's part of the work OS that we have. So again, a group is specific several domains that we own. Each domain is a team, as I said. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the role of being an R&D group lead.
Okay, excellent. So now I suppose that gives us a good enough, starting point to talk about how you're building workdocs, and the topic that we picked, of product management and having this whole product management culture in mind. So wondering in terms of where to start, why do you think it's so important to think about the product management culture and to focus on this product management approach? Can you tell me a little bit about how this happened in your context? I know at some point you were working, you were doing product management without like a strict product manager on the team. So tell me more about that and why this topic is so important.
Yeah, I think we had several forces here that work. Took us towards having what I call a team of product owners.
Yeah.
One of them is that I always thought about what does it mean to be an impact driven, which is kind of there's a hype around it. In the
Mhm.
recent years, everyone are doing would like to manage things with impact driven in mind, but I always thought about what does it mean that you're impact driven. It means probably that you're seeing some needle and you want to direct that needle at some point towards a specific goal or a KPI or metrics that you're measuring. And but what does it mean, per se, to doing that, and how you can create a team that are actually doing an impact, or that are being an impact driven. There are many ways to do that, and not all of them are actually, I have to say, are cool ways of doing that, because, for example, you can make impact without being able to decide anything along the way. Like I can tell you that at the end of the day you did something, it moved the needle. I can show you that it moved the needle, but how much did you take part of it, of making the decisions and thinking about what we can do together in order to move that needle, to decide about the KPIs together and all of that. So that is one thing that I knew that I want everyone in the team to be kind of product owners, that they know that it's not about only being impact driven, which is super important. I have to say it's something that it's one of the topics that we're talking about on day to day at monday.com for sure. And I think that behind all that, I want the team to be really care about what they are building, and what others are thinking about they are building, what the user think about the product itself, and to grow it in the way that we believe that it will make the most impact.
Okay.
So that is one thing. The other thing is that when we start something at monday.com, we not necessarily have all the roles working on that, at the starting point in time. And when we started actually to work on Monday workdocs, believe it or not, for a while we were just the 3 or 4 of us for a long time. One of them was a very senior product designer who was able to take everything, from the designing and the UX and UI of that product, and the others were engineering team, and all of us were actually needed to be at some point or to take the role of the product manager because we didn't have one.
Yeah.
So those were like the two forces that kind of took us to where we are today, and obviously since then we grew and we try to preserve it. So that's the way that we got to create a team that is very focused on the product itself rather than just the engineering. I think one important thing that I have to say about that is that at Monday, the way that we are looking at who's building the product, we call those people builders, not R&D, not engineering, not product team. And for a reason, because we believe the builders that are actually building the product, and those are consist of the roles of product designer, product manager, engineering, and also data analyst, are all contributing equally to make sure that the product is actually reaching the goal and the KPIs that we are aiming for. So that is one important thing that I have to say also, that is kind of the holistic way and the Monday way of doing that is also embraced and allow that to happen.
Yeah, I feel like that's also extremely important because when we're on the subject of culture, it's all about how you name things, right?
Right,
And
right.
for example, one thing that stands out to me from what you said is that the data analysts are also builders. I can totally see a scenario where it's like the builders are the people who are actually delivering the code, delivering the designs. But I can really resonate with the fact that the data analysts are there too, because they inform so much of how and when and what to build, right?
Right, and I think one good example of that is that, like many companies, has the growth team or people that are focusing on growing that specific company. At Monday, we have a large group of what we call growth. And imagine about the growth team working about specific metric. How do you improve the, let's say, the conversion to paying, of people becoming from or turning from trial period to becoming a paying people.
Of course.
So imagine a group of that people working only with engineering, product manager, and product designer without a data analyst. That couldn't happen.
Right.
Like the data analyst specifically in that area, and obviously in other locations that we have also at Monday, those are very strong and impactful data analysts that raise hypotheses and check all day long how it will affect the churn or the retention of the second week retention that we have at the platform, and those are many aspects that you cannot do only with the other roles within the team. And that's only one example of why, for example,
Exactly.
product analyst is important as any other role
Exactly.
within the builders.
Oh, actually, we have a question coming in right as I was about to ask my follow-up. Let's focus on the questions from the audience first, though, because that's what we always do on techleadershub. Lionel is asking, how do you onboard or convince engineers that are not used to working in that way? Well, what would you say, Ron?
Yeah, that's a great question, Leo. So first of all, I think what we do is like in both ways. You were talking about engineers, Leo, but I think that is what I'm going to say is relevant for everyone within the team. Whenever anyone is actually joining the team from the onboarding period, we always take the first tasks that people are working on to cover many aspects of the task. So, for example, I can give you a task that will be to create, I don't know, a specific button that is super important for us, or move a specific button to a different location within the product that is super relevant for us. And I can just tell you that we did the research and we find out that it's important, and you can just write the code and do that. That is one way to do so. But what we like to do is, first of all, to give you the end-to-end ownership upon that specific task. So you need to add the events and to make sure that you didn't hurt anything else. If it requires to have an A/B test, for example, then you need to conduct that A/B test as part of the feature that you're working on to make sure that you didn't hurt any other metric that we care about. It could be a specific feature that we would like to do some interviews before we actually implement that specific feature. All of that will be part of the task that the engineer is actually leading right now. That is on one hand from the engineering side. But what I think is more important here is that the product manager is also understand that it's an ownership of the engineer. It's not that the product manager expect to do all the things by himself or herself, and just to move that specific spec to the other side of the table, go and just do that. So I think I don't really think that I need to convince anyone to do so. I think the onboard here is more important. In your question, Leo, is that the way that we onboard people, we show them that this is the way that we do that, and this is the way that we work, and it's like a magic, because immediately you see the big picture from your first task, and obviously we continue to do so with every task that we're working on. And I have many of examples that along the way, and I'll be happy to share as well. I think that's the way we onboard people and make sure that they are focusing on the writing, not about just the coding itself, because it's really easy to take great engineers and let them just to code. That's in my opinion is how we do that.
Awesome. I really love that answer. I hope Leo does too. Thank you so much for that question. That was great stuff from you, Ron, here. And as always, the audience has better questions than the host here. So keep them coming, please, Leo and everybody else watching. I'm going to hide this for now. So let me try and kind of digest what you just said. So the way I see this is that instead of having this new developer coming in and okay, here's a piece, you can work on that piece and kind of add it to the whole, and we'll make sure it fits. It's like, here's the machine. There's a part of the machine that you're going to be working on, but you need to take into account the entire rest of the machine and how this is all connected to the other parts. It immediately changes their thinking into a different mode, doesn't it?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it immediately creates part of what I was talking about, the culture that we like to have at Monday.com, where everyone really focuses on the product. Because I think of it that it's really easy for us, coming from the engineering side, from the software engineering side. For years, I was, focusing on the best practices and how you do like a super neat and top-notch engineering. And it's really, I can discuss with people for hours about that. But what it really puts is the important thing here is the product itself at the center. And if you do like the best engineering, but at the end of the day, you heard our churn rate, that people churn when people are actually abandon the feature or abandon the product itself, which is even worse, then you didn't do any good. So I think that is more important to know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I feel that completely. Wilmar, I'm sorry, these names, I've never seen them before, is saying amazing. Thank you for mentioning that. And yeah, keep those comments coming. So I was meaning to ask you, but that was like 10 minutes ago, to dig a little bit deeper into impact and what you mean by impact. But I can kind of already start guessing at the answer, because you're talking about impact all the time, right? You're talking about churn, retention, these metrics. Am I getting it correctly that when you say impact, you mean these metrics, or is it something more?
I think that is one form that is super important for us, and as a company, and for us also as a domain, as a specific group or a specific land that we are owning, a specific feature, for example. We do care about the KPIs, about the metrics. If we see the satisfaction rate dropping in period of a month, or if we see again going back to conversion to paying metric being affected in a bad way for a specific period in time, we will check that and try to understand why it was hurt, or obviously we will try to prevent that at first place. But that is only one form of it. I think the other forms, and probably there are more that I'm not even able to think about right now, that people would be adding from their experience. I think one of them that I find super important is the feedbacks that we are getting for the product. So what we actually did specifically for the workdocs, as an example, when we started it, we created like right at the top of the doc itself. The very first thing that we did is to allow you to submit a feedback on that specific feature that we just created. Okay. It was in a in a beta situation, like things were broken. Really, they were broken. We released something that people were using and experiencing bad things. So most of the feedbacks weren't a big surprise for us back then, a year ago. But obviously we wanted to create the speed and to work fast as improving it along the way. So we added the feedback form to the doc itself. And one of I think the most important things that you can verify the impact that you are doing on the users is actually reading the feedback themselves. So one thing that we did, in many companies, I believe, and in many teams, I think common behavior would be to connect everything straight to the the kind of the Zendesk system or whatever you have. So customer experience, customer success team will get all the feedbacks and they will answer, they will open bugs if it's important. And we obviously do that also in Monday. But what we found really important to do specifically on the early stage of a new product is to connect everything to Slack. So we basically integrated the feedback forms that we had, even the Zendesk and the bugs that were opened specifically for the workdocs. We got everything straight into our face. The entire team, the entire builders team that was working on the workdocs. At some point, we were even 6 or 7 people working on that. And everyone were reading any feedback that we got from customer. And that is a great way to see the immediate impact of how you do. Like we felt that we released something, and like 2 days ago, people were saying like, why the heck did you do just that to the product? Or on the other hand, wow, that is a cool feature. I was waiting for that for a while, and thank you for having that. And I think those are the most important thing here is that, again, you connect everyone within the team, not just the product manager, not just the CX that is working closely with the product team or the builders team, but everyone within the team to read each and every feedback that we get, and you create an impact-driven culture or a product-centric culture that people understand that there's a product here, there are users here that actually use the product. So,
okay,
hope that answer. I hope that answered the question. I have to say, I was talking
did.
and talking, and then like.
No, Ron, it did, and then some. When the guest is sharing something that I think is pure gold, I just tend to shut up and let it happen. So thank you for sharing all of that. And yeah, this is something that I also wanted to touch upon, and I have it noted from our conversation before the call. It's like I have it noted down as connect the world straight into the team's face. I think it's so kind of visual, right? But yeah, connecting this feedback right into Slack. That makes, of course that makes sense. And one facet of it that I didn't think of is, of course, there's also positive feedback, and it might be great to get it in such an immediate fashion, right?
Yeah. So I think that is a very helpful tool for everyone who listened to this call. Specifically, again, going back to engineering team, we are coding. We like to be on our IDE all the time, all day long, and to code. Obviously, no one thinks that 24 hours of the day we are spending all the engineering time that we have in Monday.com on reading feedbacks and think only about the product and KPIs and metrics. At the end of the day, people need to code. What I think is more important here to understand is how you ease your engineering team life to be able to get all the feedback. So the way that we did it specifically is we chose the most common tool that we use on our day-to-day, which is Slack in our case. And we connected everything to there. I have to say that we have a great culture around the feedbacks. We are sometimes we are conducting 1 hour discussion around one feedback that we just got, and it really put our attention in a good way or a bad way, or things that we think that we need to improve because of that specific feedback. And you are saying if a person was actually taking the time to write such a long a paragraph about our specific feature or specific product, then obviously we need to read it and treat it and act accordingly. And I have to say that also, in early stages, most of the things that we put in our roadmap were actually an outcome of specific feedbacks that we got. We kind of created trends around the feedback. So, I don't know, for example, many people would like to be able to get an export to PDF of that doc. And we saw that that's a high trend that we get around the feedback. So we obviously developed that. So that's just one example. Yeah.
Okay, that's excellent. And this. Oh, I'm so sorry about my camera there. Okay, seems like it's back.
Yes.
Let's hope it doesn't go. It went away again. I can see that. Give me just a sec, all right?
Okay.
Sorry about that. Gonna change my video here. Any questions in the meantime, dear watchers and listeners? Now would be a great time. Meanwhile, yeah, I got back to my laptop camera. Let's do it like this. So continuing the conversation then. Sorry about that. So connecting the feedback to Slack seems like one tactic that really worked out for you, right? It's nice, actionable. Somebody, tech leaders from other organizations could take this and apply this to their own ways of working on their product. I wanted to ask you for basically more of that. What other
Cool.
tactics
Yeah.
do you have to share then? That could help with this product, this impact-driven culture, and to make that happen.
Yeah, so one thing that I can think of, and forgive me for going back to the feedbacks that we just got in Slack before I continue to
Sure.
the other one. One thing that I saw right on at the beginning was like hearing one of the engineering leads that I have in that specific team of workdocs talking to someone, and I was like, at the end of the call, I was asking him what was that about, and he said, yeah, I just read a feedback on something that I developed like last week, and apparently with a German keyboard, someone in Germany like experienced a bad thing, unexpected behavior with one of the shortcuts that we developed for the workdoc that wasn't really supported in German keyboard. And then I said, oh, you just kind of did a user interview on one of the features in a way, and we just thought, hey, why won't we conduct more user interviews? Obviously we do that at Monday, but it was really early stage of the Monday workdocs, and then we start to do it more and more. So one of the things that we are constantly doing is doing user interviews together with the engineering team. So we are not only let the CX or by the way, at Monday we have a team of UX research. Those are a team of people that really professional about interviewing people and ask them to do interviews with the users. By the way, we also have usability lab at monday.com when we actually bring people to the office now, when we are allowed to do that. Before that, we did it virtually, and let them sit in specific room and ask them to do specific things on the computer or the mobile. And actually behind the scenes in a different room, we sit and watch everything in live. We do that for specific for many products at monday.com or many features. We also conduct that obviously on the Monday workdocs, and that is an amazing tool to make sure that everyone really stay focused on the user experience, for example, which is a super important aspect of the product itself. So another thing that what I want to say about that is another important thing is that we are interviewing users, we are doing usability tests or usability hubs on the product itself. And last thing I have to say that we are watching, we are using Full Story. I'm not sure if everyone on the call familiar with that on the session. So just for you to understand, the Full Story is a way to kind of record the specific sessions within the product. Or actually, I have to say that one of the favorite things that we like to do is to sit for a beer and actually watch Full Story sessions. We actually do that. We are mainly focusing on recently added features to the product. So, for example, if we added, let's say, a table of content to the doc itself, we like to see how people are actually using it. What they do with it. Are they clicking it to navigate? Are they just scrolling? Are they closing it or opening it? Obviously, we have many events and we can get it from the events themselves. But sometimes for more complex features, you would like to see how much time it took them to get to that specific feature and to reveal that it's actually doing whatever it's doing, or it should do, and all of that. So that's another way to create impact-driven culture.
Wow. So it's great that you're sharing, things that, the watchers and listeners can just take and apply to their own workflows. But one additional question popped into my mind, and, watchers and listeners, if you're curious about anything, ask your questions. Here's mine though. I'm wondering, as group lead here, you did mention, that the engineers need to have time to actually sit down and write some code, and there's work other than what you just described that is also happening within the project. Do you ever think, or do you have some kind of framework for thinking how much of the team's time should be spent on reading feedbacks, having these user interviews. What I'm hearing is more time should be spent on that maybe many managers are doing right now. But have you ever thought about kind of the proportions, or how do you structure that?
Actually, I have to say that I never focused on that, thought about, wait, are we spending too much time on feedbacks and such? So I don't think it's happening. I think it's really like I have to say that, towards this discussion, I wanted to focus on the culture and being impact driven. So it sounds like all day long we are just handling feedbacks and reading and watch full story sessions. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's not the case. We do have specific hours in the week when we dedicate to look at numbers, to look at specific sessions recorded, or to read feedbacks and all of that. But that's really like few hours a week. It's really nothing. I think on the day-to-day, I would say that people are not really putting more than, 10% of the time to do that, and there's no necessity to do so, right? Because everything is like, it's really easy. We are getting everything right at the spot when we want to get it. So it's really easy for the entire team to get everything that they need immediately. One thing that is also important to understand here, we are really data driven. So data driven in a way that we have a large group called Big Brain internally at monday.com that are responsible to the data lake that we developed internally. So everything, like really everything within the product itself, any feature that we develop, we measure many things. So we fire many events from the product itself to that specific data lake. And what this specific group is responsible for is that everyone within Monday, from the engineering and the product and the designer team and sales and CX and everyone, will be able to slice and dice the data the way they need and to get everything like instantly. So even for that, we don't even spend too much time, to understand the impact of specific things on users and how they use the new features and such.
Wow. So I mean, that's amazing that you have this. And the group is called Big Brain, you said?
Yeah. It's
I
a
love
funny
that
name, huh?
name.
Yeah.
I'm curious about it, actually. So how does that, is this like, maybe I'm showing my ignorance here, pardon me if so, but is it like you turn to this team and you ask like somebody on the team, could you give me data on how the table of contents is used? Or is it more like
Sure.
they create something that's kind of self-serve?
So we do both. Actually, as part of the task that we are developing, we are actually creating, obviously, firing all the events that are necessary for measuring everything that we do, like really, really everything that we do.
Sure.
Even if you open a drop down in one of the features that we have. So one thing is obviously to create that, but just to close the loop, after we finish the task or at the end of the task, we are also creating, like, we have dashboards and everything. So we are also adding widgets to the dashboards that we have that are relevant for that specific feature. At later stage, by the way, we did something, we call it analytics coffee. It's a time in the week. Actually, we do it every 2 weeks. We are sitting for a coffee and we watch the numbers and the widgets that we created along, like, in the last few months, how features are actually being used and so on. That's obviously it's something that probably many people are doing with features, but just because you asked that, I think most of the time the dashboard and the widget and the data will already be there. I rarely find myself asking for someone something that they didn't create ahead of time. Because again, in my opinion, that's a good signal for a good culture that is a product centric and would like to measure what they do. Because at the end of the day, you can engineering, you can create code, and that's it.
Okay, right. It sounds like the calendar at Monday is really fun. It's like analytics coffee, beer, and full story, right?
Yeah.
Do you have anything more like that? It's like
No, actually, just that we have some fun time without numbers, I have to say as well. So
yeah,
that's also something
yeah.
that we have.
But I can see why it's easy to make that work feel kind of tedious, right? But connecting it with something that's a little bit more fun and a little bit more human, that I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think we've revealed a lot about kind of the tactics of how all of this works at Monday.com. And, I can tell that the product management culture there is very mature, right? It's kind of, it's in place, it's working, and, it seems like the whole company is benefiting from that. I would want to switch gears here for just a moment, though, and think about somebody who's listening to this and thinking, oh, we are so far behind when it comes to this product management culture. It's like we're not doing any of these things, for example, or very few, or not to that extent. What would you say to somebody who wants to start fixing this problem, wants to start building this product management culture, but they're just at the beginning stages? How do you start? What's the first step?
Yeah, so if you allow me, before I answer that, I have to say that I feel that someone need to understand first why it's important to do so. Because obviously, the easy way to do to kind of get the same goals in a different way within a different culture is just to put the product manager response for everything. Like the product manager is the product owner. Whatever they do, they own the product themselves, and they only create specs for the engineering team, or make sure they review it at the end or whatever it is. And same goes with a product designer within the team. You pass that and you get back the design, and that's it. What I think is more important here is to understand that once you do that, it's not that the product manager role is not important. Product manager is super important role at Monday.com, obviously. You would all guess that. I think what it creates is it reduces the tension between product management team and the engineering team and the product designer team. We create a common language between those teams. So everyone within the domain itself speaks the same language. By the way, we do the same thing for product designing. By the way, we have lectures around craftsmanship and how we fine tuning the UI UX, and that is relevant for all the engineering that are onboarded in Monday. The first things that they learn is craftsmanship, and later on, it's really easy to discuss between a product designer and an engineer about specific UI feature that we need to add. So that is the first thing I want to say is understand the goal and why it's important. It's culture for a reason that we are building there. It creates less tension and super fun environments to work within. I think the first steps that people should start do is making sure that the product manager is not there to write specs. That's the immediate thing that I find super important. Even worse, if you have a product manager and then you have a bridge, which sometimes people call it a product owner or a project manager or architecture or whatever it is, which is kind of a bridge between the engineering team, because he speaks techie and he also speaks product management. That's even, in my opinion, a bit worse, because it means for me that you are even further than that. What you created there is us versus them, and each one has a different role within the team and responsibility, and it creates a lot of tension, in my opinion, within the team. So first thing first, make sure that you don't end up with having one person responsible and owning the product itself and just telling the other engineering team and the product designer what to do. That is, in my opinion, the furthest action that I see from how we work today. And just make sure that people are actually being more product centric and they don't engineer only for the sake of engineering, which is also an important topic by itself, by the way.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm sure I'm kind of, this is going to be hyperbole to some extent, but does it mean that, if you came into an organization that was structured like that, would you do away with the product owner, or kind of how would you restructure that?
So, it's a good question. You heard about, companies that had a QA at some point, but later on decided to move everything to be automated, and then you no longer have a manual QA within your team. And then maybe afterwards you're saying everyone will do the automation test, so why do we need an automated test team, right? So it's kind of the same. I don't think that in one day you're saying, okay, let's fire all the product owners, and obviously that's a highly demanded role as well. So I'm not saying that everyone are actually fit to that specific culture and the way that we work. So don't do any immediate actions right away, but think about how you can close the gaps. Obviously, maybe you can keep all the roles, but just close the gaps, create a mutual language that common language that people understand each other, and you obviously remove the friction or the tension that is being created between the teams.
So it sounds to me like it's about giving the people that are on the team, despite the general structure, which we can kind of leave be, but giving them like a broader view. I love the QA example that you bring up. It's like, don't just think about the coding, think about the QA as well. And now don't just think about the coding and the QA, think about the impact and the product too.
Yeah, kind of the same, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I really feel that, and I feel like that kind of tells us how to begin building this team of product owners. That is kind of the kind of main topic.
Yeah, I think also what is important to understand is, what do you do when you say that someone is the product owner? What does it mean about the rest of the people within the team? Are they not owners of the product? They do not own whatever happening within the product that they are building. So one thing that is super important here is that when you do like the R&R, the roles and responsibilities, some people do not sure if you're familiar with the RACI chart. It's like you're saying, we like each role, what's the responsibility, who is accountable for that, who should be informed, and so on. I think what you do when you do such thing, you immediately tell the others that they are not part of it. So I always think about what the others will think. Working within a team, if you say, okay, that specific person is responsible for something, you immediately saying the rest that they are not responsible for something. Okay, so that's, in my opinion, the friction that can happen here if you do that. So in my opinion, the role product owner, I prefer project manager. I think it sounds less that someone specifically is responsible or owning that specific product. But again, just use the right terms. That's nothing more than that.
Of course, yeah. But like we said before, with culture, it is all about the language, and it's such an exciting thought because it feels so true that when you name one person the product owner, it's like you're kind of disabling the ownership of all the other people. You're indicating that person's the owner, you're not the owner, right?
So if something is not working, that person didn't read the users correctly. It's not my fault. I just did what you wrote in the spec. So I heard that so many times, and I think it's wrong because you're building something together. If you want to build it right, let everyone take responsibility of what's going on here.
Okay. So I'm imagining still, because we still have like a few minutes on the clock, so I'm gonna dig into this a little bit deeper. I'm imagining still this manager, or leader, or executive, call them what you want, thinking about taking the first steps. I can see that taking a good hard look at the responsibilities and how the team understands their responsibilities and the extent of it. Having those conversations seems like an important step. Would you recommend anything else to start building that culture? From the things that you mentioned, I'm thinking, which of those would be kind of the most important to introduce earlier, wait a little bit later? I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really care about doing in the groups themselves, because obviously, again, we have product managers, we have product leads, we have many roles around the product management that again, super important. So two things about that. One is that, first of all, define well the role of the product manager. The way that we like to see the product manager role is someone that actually putting the flashlight outside of our world and shows us, the team, what's out there that we may not even think about, like opportunities and other stuff that are out there. Obviously, that person will be more in touch with, getting back to users and so on. It's not that, again, not the entire team will do that all the time. So define well what the product manager role is about and how do you like them to act within the team. And can you repeat the question again? So I'll remember
I was thinking, I want to build that culture, and what steps I should take other than thinking what are the responsibilities of people on the team, the builders team we can call that. And now you're saying also think about the role of the product manager. So yeah, that's what I got thus far.
Yeah. So I think that's the most important, and obviously, again, going back to how you build the culture is super important here, and how you
Yeah.
treat each and everyone within the team. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. And it's obviously it's a process that takes time, right? It's not going to happen
It
overnight, and
takes
it's not like
time.
yeah.
Obviously, it takes time. There are places that are less fit for that specific culture at this moment. But again, you can do small changes towards reaching that goal if you care about that specific goal.
Mhm.
And yeah, there are many things that we have on the plate to create that culture. By the way, one of the things that we also love to do is to to create recognition for the impact that people actually did in the market. So I don't know if I can recognize you for a good and best practices around engineering. Obviously, that's very easy to do, and you improve the performance, which is also super important for users and experience. But I can also take a screenshot of good feedback that I found on the social platform. We have many social platforms for monday.com, and people are writing many things on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, obviously. My hobby is to take a screenshot of those specific feedbacks around features that we release within the group, and paste them in our group in Slack. So that is another way to show the immediate impact of what you do on your day-to-day on users, and again connect people to the product itself, and being real impact driven here.
Yeah, that resonates very strongly with me because it's all about what kind of behaviors you highlight as being, especially kind of, let's say, worthy of praise. If you focus on the engineering and improving the performance, you're going to get more of that. But if you focus on the impact, if you show what the impact was like, then that creates the culture at the end of the day. People are saying, okay, this is appreciated. I'm going to focus on that more.
Yeah. So again, we could, by the way, in that specific example, is we could say, okay, listen, 4 seconds for something isn't good. Let's make it 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest engineering team, and we have really strong people in Monday, will sit down and think how they move it from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. But I think more important is to, for example, take like a huge trend around, hey, this is working too slowly for me. Come on, monday.com, what's going on with you? And discuss about that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
and
It's an
to
entirely
I
different
think
message.
at the end of the day, what I'm trying to pass here is always think about how you show the users of the product, how you show the impact of what the product is doing on the market. One thing that we discussed several times recently, unfortunately, by the way, we had some downtimes, and you saw feedbacks from people saying that they actually their day was kind of chopped or broken. They had a task that they needed to do, or a meeting that they needed the board at monday.com, and they didn't able to operate, and you're saying, wow, that's a great impact that I'm doing on users. Not in a good way, but obviously we look also on the bad things that we are from time to time doing, and the mistakes that we have, and learn from it, and you are saying, wow, I'm learning the impact even from the bad things that we have. So a downtime of 1 hour actually, or even 30 minutes actually ruined someone's meeting, and they needed to
Yeah,
reschedule because of that. You are saying, wow, that's a crazy impact on the world, and
yeah,
that is also important to do.
right. So, and I love that as a kind of note to end on. Think about how your product is affecting people at the end of the day, and
People
their
life,
day.
actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's people's
people's
life.
lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Wow. Thank you so much for the conversation, Ron. We shared so much. I think that is actionable, and there was so much inspiration. let me just ask you a quick question. Do you have a couple more minutes, or do we need to finish like at right on the dot in 1 minute?
I have a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Okay, good, good. Because I wanted to, well, first of all, thank you for sharing everything that you did share. But obviously, you just spent an hour sharing your wisdom here on Tech Leaders Hub. I wanted to ask if you would like to put any messages out there using our platform, as in any announcements for our audience.
Yeah, I think one thing to know about Monday.com is that we are hyper growing. We were always hyper growing, and obviously, as part of that, we are hiring more and more, and we look for very talented, super talented people to join us. So, what I want to say is, you are from Poland, so I think it's super relevant as well for you, for your side of the, globe crowd, and for everyone. By the way, we opened just an office in Warsaw, and
Wow.
we are
Okay.
hiring their engineering team. So if you really liked what you heard and you want to be part of it, so that is one thing. We also open a London office where we will be hiring also for several roles, but mainly for the engineering team as well and product management roles. So that is also an interesting for those from the UK. And one of the things that I have to say is that every day brings with it new challenges because we are hyper growing. It's like not just we are hyper growing, we also decided this year that we are going to be a multi-product company, and we started to work on different products outside of the classic Monday.com. Some of them we already released early this year. And I think that also brings with it new challenges and new ways to look on the world and solve different problems. And I think that if you really loved what you heard and you want to take part of it, so just join us and look for the specific role within the careers page that we have at Monday.com.
Okay, an office in Warsaw. Awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. The ambition is kind of palpable from what you're saying. Got some comments rolling in at the end here. Leo saying, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being with us, Leo. Thank you, Miles. And Christian saying, our very own Christian Mendoza, thanks for the session so far. Very insightful. Glad you liked it, Christian. And by the way, for the people who may be meeting STX Next for the first time, hi, thank you so much for joining this session. We're a software development company based here in Poland, but we're also expanding to other markets like Mexico very soon. You can watch yesterday's session to learn all about that. We have attracted some of the best talent in Poland, and we are adding them to our clients' projects all around the world with our mission to create some of the best software that the world has seen. We have developers, designers, DevOps, machine learning engineers, Node.js, Python, JavaScript, and a lot more. stxnext.com if you want your product to grow faster. And by the way, for more Tech Leaders Hub, techleadershub.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get informed about all upcoming sessions through our newsletter. There will be a recording of this one in just tomorrow's newsletter if you want to see that. But you're either watching live or the recording, so you probably don't need that. Anyway, follow STX Next on LinkedIn, definitely, for more news about our company, more content from us, and more insights like we shared today here with Ron. And much as I would like the moments to continue and the session to continue, I suppose our time is up. So thank you, Ron, so much for sharing what you shared here today. And I do hope we'll have a chance to somehow speak again soon. This was great, very insightful.
thank you, Kuba. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. And we'll end the broadcast here. See you next time.